towards the end of the session, where we will have some additional time for greater interaction. But at the same time, I encourage you to please put in all of your questions either in the chat window or the Q&A. The intention of the session, of course, is for you to understand about RPA as much as possible. And I'm going to, talk a lot about risk management and risk mitigation frameworks and how is automation being used also in the world of cybersecurity, vulnerability prevention, and things like that. But apart from whatever is the agenda, if there's anything else also, please, it's a small closed group today. Please feel free to pop in your questions at any point of time. I will keep looking at the chat window and the Q&A continuously, and I will, let's keep this conversational and moving, right? So as far as the agenda is concerned, I'll first talk about what RPA is, and typically how do organizations use RPA, right? And I'm actually going to show you some real bots in action, right? So that, seeing is believing, right? I mean, there are so many people who come in and tell me that, hey, you know what? So many people are talking about this RPA, robotics, automation, but does it really work, right? And that's where I want to show you some examples of some real RPA bots in action. And then, of course, we will talk a little bit about what are the typical benefits, why, as Narasimhan said in the introduction, that it has become a big buzzword. Why has it become a big buzzword, right? Why is it that everybody wants to move in this direction? Then we'll move quickly to the risk angle. And, when you implement technologies like RPA, which is supposed to integrate within the servers of any enterprise, it poses a lot of risk challenges, right? So I'm going to take you through typically what are the risk challenges which are faced with RPA implementations. Again, I'm going to show you a couple of live examples of typical risk challenges and how can our organizations mitigating them today. And then we'll close by a quick note on how RPA is being used in the world of cybersecurity today, right? What are some of the top 5 or 6 use cases which are leveraged by cybersecurity and risk professionals to deploy RPA bots and ease out their life in that space, right? So unfortunately, you guys will be muted during the course of the webinar. But as I said, please use the chat window. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to ask you some questions every now and then, just to check your participativeness, and let's have fun and keep it absolutely extremely moving today. Whenever you have a question, please feel free to pop it in. The intention is that all of us should collectively enjoy this session, right? That being said, let me just head right into it. What is RPA? RPA stands for robotics process automation, right? And it does exactly what it sounds like. Now, imagine whatever processes get executed within the confines of a computer screen, where somebody is opening an application, fetching some data, doing some massaging on the data, pushing a report, or you have a call center agent who opens up an email, takes out a ticket ID, goes to a ticketing application, fetches detail, takes that out, puts it somewhere else. Or somebody who's just downloading data from a government website, or you're downloading logs of a vulnerability assessment report from somewhere. Then you want to compare it across applications. So whatever you can imagine as a repetitive manual task, that entire process today has the potential of getting automated across the entire spectrum of RPA. And that is what RPA does. So before I talk more about it, let me actually show you a real RPA bot in action, right? So here, this is a video. And so, first of all, RPA bots are not physical bots. These are software bots, right? So they are supposed to automate things within the confines of a system or a server space or things like that, right? Now, I'm going to show you an example of a very real world use case, where typically, you need to work with multiple applications at the same time, right? So this is an example where a bot is going to work with multiple applications at the same time, and it is going to do repetitive work, which an agent typically manually does, right? So let me play this video first. And as you see this, if there are any questions that pop into your mind, any doubts, any clarifications, please feel free to drop them in, right? So I'm just going to play this Yes, the computer sound is shared. Here we go.
In the next example, our robot will work with 7 applications at once: Excel, Word, PDF, email, SAP, terminals, and Salesforce. The Excel file contains the name, email, SAP number, and an individual code for each person. The robot will first read this data, then open the terminal, input each person's code, and get all the data from the terminal. The emails from the CSV will be input into Salesforce to find every employee, and then the expense data from the terminal will be added into the expense row. After this, the robot will create a Word document from a template with a status report for each person. The Word file will then be converted to PDF and sent as an email attachment. Finally, the robot will find the employee's position in SAP, and with all of the above data will populate the Excel file used in the beginning. Now, let's start the robot and explain the process in more detail. The robot will start by opening the terminal, Salesforce, and SAP, and by logging into all 3 systems, preparing all the applications it will work with. It will browse the pages of the terminal and find the ID of the first employee. Then identify the same person in Salesforce based on their email address. The expenses are then added in Expense IT, the Word template filled in, converted to PDF, and sent as an email attachment. The robot then finds the position of the person in SAP, then moves on to the second person, looking for the ID in the terminal. After collecting the data, the robot sees that Salesforce does not display an account for Joan, so it creates one. After doing this, it fills the expenses on Joan's account, creates the Word document, converts it to PDF, and sends it as an email attachment. Then the robot moves on to the third person, and so on. Fast forwarding, we can see that all the data is completed in the Excel file for each person, and the emails for each person are sent with a PDF attachment.
All right. So when you saw that, I'm sure you must be thinking, okay, if doing this is possible, then there is so much repetitive, mundane work which happens on a day-to-day basis, right? Let me give you some examples. I've been working with a couple of enterprises where one of the organizations, they are in the process of validating data from various documents, and they have a team of about 75 people who just open up documents, things like Aadhaar card, PAN card, and things like that, and they extract data from there and they post it into a system. Now, those kind of use cases, which are extremely labor intensive, they can be automated in a flash and at a very, very minimal cost, right? And if such technology is available, let me tell you something surprising, right? What if I told you that for you to create this kind of an automation, the example of which you just saw right now, it doesn't take you more than 2 weeks of efforts with a very, very good RPA engineer? Would you believe me? And what if I told you that you could download one of these RPA tools and get started with it actually free of cost? It's a small downloadable file, which would be say 100 or 150 MBs. And to create this, you do not need to write a single line of code, right? Then I'm sure it would be very exciting, right? And that's precisely the reason why this technology has become such a buzzword, right? It gives people access to the right returns on investments. It automates processes, makes them more efficient at a fraction of a cost, and you get, very good results. Now, I have one question from Mohammad Azhar. Mohammad, your question is, how does RPA take care of Citrix systems? And Tarun, I see you've raised your hand. Just type in your question in Q&A if possible. And towards the end, maybe we can have some one-on-one interaction. So coming back to your question, Mohammad, how does RPA take care of Citrix systems? So Mohammad, within RPA, there is a functionality called computer vision, right? So it will log in into the Citrix system, and we use image-based automation, where it can take image, extract contents of that image, and then it can do send keys and send mouse functions, right? Now, it is actually very, very good with Citrix systems. And if you look at most organizations and the way they structure their risk policies for their critical systems, vendors are never given a direct VPN based access. Vendors are given an access based on Citrix or remote desktop or some things like that, and it works well. It is not extremely good, but it gets the job done, right? So we've handled lots of Citrix based things in the past. Okay, let me see. All right. So another question.
Saurabh, there is a question that is from Hari Krishnan Nair. The question now, will RPA also take into data privacy into account when automating activities?
Sure. So absolutely, and in fact, I'm going to show you an example of this whole scenario even today, that how is data privacy taken into account, right? Now, most of the organizations which are implementing RPA today, they are large banks, insurance companies, health hospitals, healthcare organizations, and they deal with a lot of PII, or personally identifiable information. There are many different ways in which the PII information gets protected, and while it is being saved onto the systems. And I'm going to actually show you an example today of how RPA typically handles it. Apart from this, all the RPA tools which exist, they go through uh, very robust security assessment across organizations, and all of these RPA tools. For example, here, this video comes from an RPA tool called UiPath. There are many different RPA tools. I will come to that also later. These guys already have your typical SOC2 Type 1 certification, VeraSafe certification, and many of those things where they have been tested for the security. So security typically and data privacy is not a concern, but yes, it is something which needs to be looked into with a lot of depth. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that today again. We have another question from Hari Krishnan. Do ETL tools come under the category of RPA? If I create a shell script to interact with multiple applications, is that RPA, right? So by definition, Hari, yes. If you create a shell script to interact with multiple applications, you are using a kind of a bot to automate processes. So yeah, it is kind of RPA. But the way the terminology RPA is used in Vogue today, it refers to no code based software where you can actually just use drag and drop functions to create workflows and automate things. I can see that Om Singh you've raised your hands. You can just put in your questions in the chat window. I've already answered your question, Hari. We've got another question from Talla Pragada. How do you use bots for judgment related work like auditing, where text may need to be read? For example, an ethics policy, and based on judgment, arrive at an okay, not okay decision, right? So this comes into the domain of NLP, where you have to look at text mining, and based on an NLP algorithm, you can create a code which can actually give you a go no go decision, right? Now let me give you an example. We've done work with banks in KYC checks, right, where people upload documents, and based on the validity of those documents, we can see if the KYC is a go or a no go. Similarly for loan approvals, right? And all those things can be built in. You can create a custom code block where you can write some ML based algorithm on Python and things like that. That's one way of handling it. The other way of handling it is sometimes you may still want human beings to take care of it, right? And you can always add a human in the loop where some of the processes can go to humans for approval, right? So for example, let's say you are doing invoice processing automation. So for any invoice, the value of which say is above say $20,000, that could go in a chain for approval. But for the other ones, it can actually just go and get approved. Om, your question is data privacy and encryption risks are in RPA. Let me tell you something, Om. The way the RPA world has evolved, there are many tools out there today, right? There are some leaders like Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere, UiPath, etc. Microsoft has recently come out with their own RPA tool called Microsoft Power Automate. They are pretty good. They are all basically checked for their way they communicate with end applications. They use TLS based encryption. They use hashing. They use all those different things. However, at the end of the day, the way your communication is set up between your RPA servers and your end application servers is defined by the organization's IT policy. And in my experience, I have still seen people are not very careful about this. And in case you have too many open ports and sockets, your encryption risk can always be there. In case your data is not being stored in the right way, your privacy risk, can also be there. Saur, your question is, can RPA be able to apply for credit reporting industry? Absolutely, Saur. In fact, we've also implemented something where you can extract CIBIL scores and then put them in a certain format. If time permits, I'll probably show you a demo of that also. Thank you guys for so many questions. I'm just gonna, answer those questions quickly, but don't worry, I won't ignore your questions for the sake of moving forward. Varun, your question is, how do you cover security issues like password for RPA as it currently uses employee access? Great question, Varun. So there are two ways of doing it. One, ideally, we do not use employee access. We use Active Directory based LDAP integration with the enterprise login mechanism and create a bot ID for the bot itself, right? It's a big security risk if you are giving your employee ID access to a given bot. Also from a stability standpoint, because the password need to be changed every now and then. That's the point number one. And the second point is, even if an employee password is getting shared, there is something which is known as a credentials vault, which is a very, very secure way of storing passwords, where the application layer itself also doesn't have a clear visibility of what the password is. So that credentials vault has been certified by the industry as a very secure way of doing it. And that's how they typically do it. Maitri has a question, how do you assess bias in RPA? What controls should be used while testing RPA for bias? So Maitri, that actually depends on the various different types of biases which may exist. And I think it's a fantastic question, right? Now, there are various different types of RPA tools which are out there. The very first assessment should be which tool is fit for what purpose, right? There are some very expensive tools, some pretty straightforward tools. So it depends upon the matrix of the capability of the RPA tool versus the problem you're trying to solve, right? And based on that, the first level of bias is which tool should you basically go with, right? The second level of bias again would be in terms of which processes do you actually go ahead and select to automate, and they should be based on your business decisions and things like that. But it is more subjective and case to case driven, Maitri. But thank you for your question. Hari, your question is, robotic implies a platform for automation and not any platform agnostic methods like combination of tools. Hari, it is completely platform agnostic. There is a source tool, for example, just like Microsoft Excel is a tool which helps you in creating spreadsheets. Similarly, UiPath and Automation Anywhere are tools which help you create these robotic flows, right? But these flows can work across any application. They don't have to do with any specific applications. Samir, your question is, how do you differentiate between RPA and AI? Now, Samir, good question. Actually, RPA is a form of AI because within RPA uses a technique called computer vision. And computer vision is created based on artificial neural networks and convoluted neural networks, right? And deep learning. So some forms of RPA are like AI, but AI is highly specialized, Samir, RPA is more like repeating steps. If you've worked with macros in the past on Excel, think of as macros which has come out outside of the Excel and it is doing on your entire screen, right? So that's the basic difference. But within the world of RPA, we actually do a lot of AI work also. Joshua, your question is, can RPA be created for auditing activities like for user access reviews, change management? Absolutely, we've also done that in the past. Girish, shall we implement RPA into system auditing? Yes, Girish. In fact, I have written a couple of papers on this and I will share links to those papers. You can go through them and you can look at that. At what stage of the project or operations companies should focus on RPA? Great question, Now, you should look at processes which are stable, which are not prone to a lot of change, and where the underlying system is also not prone to a lot of change, right? Sometimes I have customers who come to me and tell me that, what, right now we are using SAP ECC, we are moving into SAP HANA, and I want to do RPA. I tell them I won't do RPA for you right now because everything will need to get redone the moment you move into HANA, right? Similarly, if your process is subject to change, then you should not do. So processes which are mature, stable, repetitive, very high volume, these are good processes for RPA. Sindhu, your question is, how can you use RPA in Security Operations Center? Sindhu, I'm going to cover this in some details towards the end, so I will answer this later. Is it possible to automate running vulnerability assessments in production servers, which is in cloud? Absolutely, Hema. And that is a prominent use case where cybersecurity and risk professionals are using RPA today. Just think of it as a very simple thing, right? Every vulnerability assessment involves logging into multiple systems, getting reports, analyzing them, and you can always trigger them and also analyze them using RPA, right? I'm going to give you some examples of this later. Guys, thank you so much for so many questions just after the first slide. I had to rush through some of these questions because I have a lot to cover also, but really appreciate, please keep them coming, right? So quick recap, what is RPA? Just like there was an industrial revolution some time back, where everything which was being done by humans, they were now being done by machines, right? Similarly, RPA robots are revolutionizing the way we administer business processes. So today you would have read news like, this IT company is firing so many employees. I think a couple of days back, I read something where some US based company, they fired 900 people over Zoom. And, a lot of these situations are happening today because a lot of labor intensive work, because of the advancement and the ease of adoption of some of these technologies like RPA and AI, they're getting automated, right? So it lets organizations automate current tasks as if a real person was doing them across systems, right? So what are the typical myths about RPA, right? Let's debunk some of those myths. First of all, RPA comprises of virtual bots. These are not physical robots, right? Don't think of, an Iron Man kind of a situation or Sophia kind of a bot coming in. Sophia is not an example of RPA, guys. Sophia is AI. Only virtual system-based things are RPA. Second biggest myth is that RPA is only for high volume operations. That's not true. I worked with a couple of organizations in US, with specifically banks, and some of their reports, they have a process called stress testing, right? And comprehensive capital analysis and review, where they have to create and submit reports to the Fed. And for some of these processes, it's not really about volumes, but the cost of going wrong is too high. And for cases where the cost of going wrong is too high, the penalties are very high, even or where you just can't afford to go wrong, right? Even people use RPA in those cases. Now, this point is very important, right? RPA is not a large IT systems integration project. It can be small and nimble. Now, if you remember about 10 to 12 years back, the big IT revolution was when we implemented SAP, right? Companies were implementing SAP at that point of time. And it used to be a huge mess where people need to buy servers, create server rooms, migrate data, spend millions of dollars, train people, handle issues over a period of 2 years. RPA is not like that. It can completely be cloud-based, one-click installation, Docker kind of a stuff where you can just install it and run on the large. And it is very easily integratable. And it also doesn't rely on backend API based or webhook based integrations. It can happen straight in the front end, right? So it's very quick. And another big myth is that it replaces humans. It doesn't. Most of the cases I've seen, well, of course, if something is extremely repetitive, it will go away, right? I'm sure some of you would have read the Future of Jobs report, which was published by the World Economic Forum. And it shows how most of the prominent jobs today, like accounting, call center agents, all of these things have a 95% plus probability of not even existing 5 to 6 years from now. And that is because we have technology today which can take care of it, right? Now, this is the most important piece. What RPA really does is that it increases possibilities of performing value added work. So I have seen teams and people where they moved away from not doing the mundane things and focusing on core strategic things. Most important, it can self-fund in itself in as less as 3 months. Imagine implementing a piece of technology which recovers its cost in 3 months, and then it starts giving you returns after that, right? So that's a great piece. Couple of questions. Vivek, your question is, how well is RPA supporting mobile devices? Well, Vivek, people in enterprises, they're not really using RPA for mobile devices as of now, because even the mobile applications are for backend. So they are able to automate things at the backend layer. But is the technology there where you can actually do this on mobile devices? Yes, the technology is actually there, right? Manish, what are the best open source and paid sources for learning about RPA and its various related elements like ML, API, Citrix, NLP, etc.? How to audit an RPA application implementation? There are two questions here, Manish, and both are great questions. First of all, Manish, there is very good quality content available open source. There is no point in, there are lots of paid courses also, but there's no point in going for a paid course in my view. Just go to UiPath Academy or Automation Anywhere Academy. UiPath and Automation Anywhere are two of the best tools in RPA. They have set up their own online e-learning based learning systems. Whatever things you've written here, ML, API, Citrix, NLP, source code, all of these things you can do. They will also give you access to their tools. You can actually practice it, right? So please go there and learn from there. How do you audit an RPA application or implementation right now? There are two or three important things here. And Manish, typically what happens is that whenever some organization implements RPA, there are three technical documents which are generated and they need to be audited by the auditor. The first document is called the process design document, and you need to check that all parts of the process are covered as part of the automation flow. If not, then something is going to break. The second is the solution design document. The solution design document actually takes care of all the integration with various different applications. So you will have to check if the integration of the various applications as per the SDD, first of all, does it comply to all the InfoSec policies and best practices for internal controls framework? And secondly, for the actual solution, have they actually been implemented, right? And the third piece is the technical design document, where this is purely for cloud-based implementations and things like that, where you have to check and run vulnerability tests for some of these pieces. Secondly, when a system is live, it actually has a lot of audit trail built in. I'm actually going to show you an example of how audit trail within the world of automation looks like today, a live example. But at the same time, the short answer is that you have to go through all the logs, see what went wrong and things like that. It's very easy to commit frauds even within an RPA based system. And I'm going to come to some of those things also later as we move on. Okay. What are the typical outcomes of implementing RPA? Number one, it reduces human efforts by 20 to 50%. It is accurate and completely rule based. It reduces your operating expenses by at least 20%. I have seen cases where it's 60 to 70%. I don't think most of the companies I'm working with today, they don't do RPA if it's not given 35% ROI at least, right? It is faster by at least more than 2 times than how humans would do it. It is non-intrusive. The ROI comes in, very, very quickly, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you another example, right? I showed you one example. I'm going to show you a slightly more complex example right now, where we automated invoice processing automation for one very large customer. And here we are working with both multiple applications at the same time. There's a layer of AI involved, right? Because the automation is one where the system automatically looks into the AP mail, down all the box, segregate, loaded. It then again extracts all the data in a standardized format. And of course, all of the different documents can have different formats, every different type of format. So it consolidates that and then pushes that thing out into entire ERP system which was there, right? Okay, is my audio and video fine, or is there still a lag?
No.
It's better now, Saurabh. I think there was a lag for a few seconds.
Correct.
Yeah, I think maybe because the background is pretty hypnotic. It keeps moving like that, and Zoom got confused. My apologies, guys. Feedback noted. I will take care of that, and thank you for dropping your note in the future, right? So I'm going to show you this automation in progress right now, right? And I've taken a video to record it. Now here, Gmail is, let's say, the sample AP mailbox. You can see there are 4 attachments here. The system constantly listens for new emails which are unread. So the moment there's a new email, it will automatically start the magic, right? So here I'm manually triggering it so that you guys can see it from a demo perspective. And I think, yeah, the bot is triggered now. It is reading the documents. If you see, it throws a pop-up. It found one email, it found 4 PDFs, all 4 were valid invoices, and they extracted data from all the 4 PDFs. So it has a very, very good process of data storage and archival. So I'll just move forward. What it does is that it puts things into various folders, right? So when an email is downloaded, it puts it here, and right now it's empty because the file is already processed. So you will see it in email extracted. And then there are these 4 invoices which were there. Let's open up one of the invoices and see what does it look like. It's a typical invoice. It is going to have your date, invoice number, PO number, billing party, vendor name. Then it will have multiple line items, tax codes, due dates, payment terms, etc., etc. And different invoices, of course, sent by different vendors will have different formats. So that's not a problem because it has AI built in. It automatically extracts all the fields there. And then what it does is that it first captures that data and converts it into an Excel CSV file. So here, this is the CSV file which got created. And this is, by the way, a real-time sped anything up, where it extracted all those details. And once these things are extracted, and just for quick comparison, you can see that every year gets captured, right? Once this extraction is done, then the second step is to actually post this in the ERP. And here I'm going to start that process. So again, for the purpose of audit trail, this is the same video, right? So for the purpose of audit trail, we asked to input a batch name so that you can have right audit trail at which invoices are actually posted by bots. And now you will see it will very quickly log in through. So it very quickly navigated, clicked through all the screens, enter the username, password, and it finally comes to this screen. I'm just going to move forward where it needs to make entry. Now here it has come to the place where it needs to make entry. It will specify the batch name, which was inputted by the user for audit trail. And now it will start pushing all the details in. So whatever you see there, it's automatically populating the details of that specific invoice. So right now it is capturing the header level data. And if you remember the invoice we saw, it had 2 line items. It will now start capturing the line level details as well. So it will start it for the first line item and then the second line item. Now, one very interesting thing, if you noticed, this was a PO based invoice, and some of us here who are from the finance background, they might relate to it more. But basically, this is the whole process where RPA can also test and validate. I think somebody had a question that how do you compare things and test things? And I told you, I'll give you an example. This is an example where it opened up this particular PO from the system, PO number 6587. Within this PO, it sees that there are 3 line items, out of which for the first line item, out of 100 total quantity in the PO, 78 is unbilled and the rest was already billed, right? So it does that 3-way match kind of a process here to make sure that it does some kind of a validation in the layer of the invoice itself. So once the validation is done, it will I'm just forwarding it. It sends it for an approval, and this approval can again goes to a manual human being to approve it. After which you can, after the approval, you can just create the accounting entries and be done with it, right? So right from the moment of receiving an invoice, typically in an AP, you have so many functions. You have scanning and indexing, so many different things. So all of those different pieces can get automated end to end, right? And I'll summarize this section by once again talking about why is there all the buzz about RP in enterprises. Number one, it is very quick to implement. It takes 4 to 6 weeks, and it gives you at least 30% and up to 80% ROI. Second point, it is a very simple piece of technology which is based on no code philosophy. Now, while I say it is no code, there might be some pieces where you might need to code, but nothing heavyweight. Most of the functionalities you can achieve without a no code kind of a philosophy, aimed at passing on power to people who are called citizen developers, right? Who's a citizen developer? People like you and me who are not essentially technology guys, but who understand business processes and businesses and functions very well, right? And it is like giving power in our hands to not rely on a technical person and do this whole thing ourselves. So enterprises that want to function, that want their function to scale up rapidly, they actually don't have any options apart from RPA. You know, I was talking to this uh, uh, new bank. There's a new bank coming up somewhere in the world, and I can't disclose a lot of confidential information, but basically it's a new bank, and then year one they will have certain volume of transactions, and year two they are supposed to increase by 5 times over a period of a very short span because of regional expansion. Now imagine if those pieces of work are done traditionally using people, you just can't scale up. To scale up, you need to rely on technology which is scalable, right? So these are the three reasons why RPA is, you know, such a big buzzword. Uh, we have another question from Arman. Can you also give a small example on ROI and cost benefit analysis? Arman, I almost read your mind, and the next slide is all about that. So when we move to that, I'll show you in just a bit. Arvind, PCAOB has now started demanding the completeness and accuracy of bots used for accounting or purpose within a client. What can auditors do to catch this requirement in their charter and planning? Does this mean we need to start hiring? So Arvind, great question. And let me tell you something, you know, that this was supposed to happen. You know, I think it's a little late. It should have happened earlier, because I remember when I started out very aggressively venturing in the RPA market around 2017, my understanding of the pulse of the industry was that a lot of people have actually not yet implemented RPA. But today, if I go to a new, large, established Indian company, listed company or a big Indian company, most of those people already have some RPA in place. And trust me, the design of that RPA is poor. There are so many people who are implementing RPA today, but people who do this actually, they're not, you know, risk professionals like yourself or chartered accountant like myself, but they're IT guys, and they do not pay a lot of attention to the risk frameworks. And that's the reason why this will come in more and more. So there is a need to create digital auditing standards where auditors need to know how to audit three things, right? Number one, how do you audit in environments and books of accounts which are co-created by a layer of humans and bots? Number two, how do you use bots as part of your audit procedures to automate processes for you to do things faster and no longer rely on things like random sampling? Because random sampling is also going to go away, right? It's a matter of time, where people will want, because it's easier to, you know, hide fraud in some random transaction somewhere. And the third important thing is that how do you audit and give, you know, assurances on the robustness of the security of the entire system, right? So all of those things are a part of that, Arvind. And there's a lot of work which needs to get done here. There are no good established guidelines in this practices yet. Vikram asked, is there an RPA audit checklist available? Vikram, yes, I can probably send that over to you separately if you drop me an email. I don't have it handy with me here right now, but we have one and I can send that over to you. Vivek, for scaling up, do we need all devices to be in focal or online mode, or will it work in headless doused mode? There are multiple different ways to deploy the RPA solution, Vivek. You know, in case you're deploying a solution in such a way that the same network has your RPA servers and devices, it doesn't need to be online all the time. And for most of these pieces, it is just a matter of, see, RPA can work with all kinds of scenarios. It's just a matter of you defining which one of these things need to get implemented, and you can, you know, basically move accordingly. Girish, I will leave you my email address towards the end. You can send me an email and I will respond to that. Thank you so much. Okay, great. So, you know, again, the reason for the buzzword, I'll show you. This is a video, I think, from a competition which Deloitte organized between some of their auditors and, you know, a bot, right? Let me show you. So they did some invoice processing competition. And sorry, I think this video is in Dutch, so ignore the audio, but there is transcript here. So I'll quickly play this and then I'll come back to what I was saying.
Om het op te nemen tegen een robot en ik ben van plan om die robots even hard in te maken.
Hoe gaat het, mannen?
Het gaat heel goed.
Hoeveel van deze dossiers heb je al gedaan?
Ik heb nu net de 31ste factuur verstuurd.
30 facturen al. Jij?
Ja, ik heb een iets moeilijker budget of pakket gekregen, denk ik. Ik zit op 23.
Wat zien we nou eigenlijk? Wat gebeurt er op dit moment?
Er is een Excel-bestand, heeft de robot ingelezen. En al die variabelen trekt hij uit het Excel-bestand, zet hij hier in de velden. Het wordt heel snel gegenereerd en ingezet. Veel sneller dan een persoon dat zou kunnen doen.
Ja, zo snel kan niemand tikken, ja?
Wordt hier de invoice gecreëerd, pdf-bestand, slaat de robot op en hij gaat door naar de volgende rij in het Excel-bestand.
Volgens mij hadden de 3 werkstudenten gezamenlijk 129 facturen gemaakt in een klein uur tijd. En de robot had er 192.
Okay, so 3 of their, good associates, they did 129 invoices and the robot did 192 on its own, right? And that basically tells you small transactional things like these, it's very easy. And somebody asked for a business case. Here is typically and this is a real business case for one of our customers, and it's a US based company. They used to process close to about 136,000 invoices in a year. They used to spend close to about $1.2 million in processing these invoices based on staff cost and things like that. And we reduced that from $8.5 to about $3.5 per invoice, which is about 60% ROI, right? And the typical costs which get a part of implementation of RPA, there are 2 or 3 types of costs involved. One, you have an implementation cost, which is basically the cost of your engineers, the salary cost, and things like that to implement that. The second piece of cost is your infrastructure, where you need to get a cloud infra to control, and it depends upon the scale of your RPA implementation. If your RPA implementation is a small implementation, you can actually just do it on-prem or locally also. The third component is the license cost, and there are hundreds of different types of RPA licenses. It depends upon what kind of implementation you need, what kind of bots you need. Are you doing it within Citrix? Are you extracting data from documents, so on and so forth. So these guys, for example, they saved about $2 million for an implementation which took, I think, 6 weeks. And that's one example of typically what benefits are. I'll come to the questions. Is there an assessment process for determining which processes are amenable to be automated via RPA? Absolutely. There is a very scientific and detailed assessment process, which is a part of it. And I can probably send something over to you for you to refer to at a later point of time. But in a nutshell, I'll tell you, processes which are repeatable, rule-based, mature, stable, give you good ROIs, high volume-based. These are the processes which you should go for. And then every process, there is a very long assessment process. That there's a technical assessment of whether it can be automated or not, right? And there is a very, very formal process of doing this. Om has a question: how do you manage governance of RPA script to avoid frequent changes? So Om, there are 2 or 3 different pieces there. First of all, just like any piece of software, you have a change management and a changed deployment process. So you follow the same process for RPA, right? Once you deploy an RPA script in the production environment, you don't change that. Similar to any software development lifecycle framework. So simplest answer is once it is deployed, you don't change it. But if you need to change something, you just go back in the production environment, change it, and publish a release version so that you can just track that, right? Great. I think we are all done with the questions, right? So I can see that, a lot of people here come from maybe the finance and the audit background also. So I will also want to answer your questions specifically from a finance perspective, and I'll not take more than 5 minutes. And of course, a copy of this presentation I will share with the entire group, and you can refer to it. So a lot of people have asked that, which processes should you automate and things like that, right? So within the finance world specifically, world which is close to me since, I'm a chartered accountant, what we've done is that we've broken down all F&A processes into two buckets: transactional F&A processes and specialist corporate finance rules. And within transactional processes, you've got procure to pay, order to cash, and record to report, and so many different functions like treasury, audit, taxation, etc., and specialist rules. And then for each one of these, we've created a heat map where whatever you would see in a dark green are cases which are highly automatable. Whatever you see in red have close to no automation potential. Whatever you see in these two shades of blue have slightly higher and slightly lower potential, right? And you can use this as a reference point for the future. So for example, if you look at procure to pay, there is low automation potential in the way you receive an invoice because it depends on your underlying vendor. But processing an invoice, scanning and indexing, running the payments, extremely highly automatable, right? Similarly, for your record to report, things like reconciliations, closing and reporting, extremely automatable. For your financial planning and analysis, things like MIS reporting and forecasting, extremely automatable. Within treasury, you don't want to automate your cash management. Again, within taxation and legal, all your regulatory filing requirements, even in the Indian context, the entire GST reconciliation, we've done, so much work there. Then within audit, the whole way you collect data, you do your verification, reporting, creation of reports, exception reports, all of those things are, extremely automatable. And whatever you see marked with an asterisk, these are cases which are in the world of finance, the top 4 use cases globally, because they are easy to implement and they carry a very, very strong ROI also, right? We have a question. Can you please throw more light on security concerns? You have answered on password, but what more we should be looking into? I have a detailed section on this, Mariamal, so I will take you through that. Also, will the auditing get more focused on logic testing based on which RPA bot works? So will auditors have to be technical to do this? So you know what? It is not technical on the technology side, but technical on the process side, right? So what is the process flow of the bot which has been built, right? You have to audit it from that perspective, not really from and just like today, if you spoke to an auditor about 10 to 15 years back, and an auditor would not believe that they can do system audits, just like you can do system audits today, right? So it's not that difficult. We just need some structured learning material to be put in place to get that thing done. And your first question, I will answer in just a little bit time in a lot of depth. So RPA and internal audit, can you throw some light? Vikram, there are lots of use cases for internal audit. Again, I have published a paper on it, and I will give you guys a link to that paper. Actually, it's on my LinkedIn. I'll give you my LinkedIn ID. You can just go and read that paper. It's very comprehensive. It has a lot of depth there, but basically you can, internal audit requires a lot of assessments, account verifications, third-party confirmations, a lot of, reporting to be done, and all those things can be automated fairly easily. Devdas has a question: what is the starting point to go with RPA and how to prepare a team? So Devdas, first, create this kind of a heat map for yourself, right? Based on whatever is your area of work, identify and these small boxes that, are you a risk professional? Are you a tax professional? What kind of work do you do? Then within your mind, think which of these look automatable and create this kind of a heat map. Once you have this created, just, get in touch with somebody who can guide you on how to implement RPA, or even better, parallelly start learning. I spoke about, let me just type this out, UiPath Academy, Automation Anywhere Academy. These are two places where you can learn RPA, and that's the way to start. Just start going through some of these courses and questions. It will take care of most of your pieces. Santosh says, can you please show some insight on RPA with GDPR compliance? Absolutely, Santosh. So there are 2 or 3 different angles to it. One, most of these big RPA tools are GDPR compliant themselves in the way they store personally identifiable information. I will actually show you some examples also today. And secondly, you can use RPA in your GDPR compliance assessments, right? you can create scripts which can go through all the data and understand if and test if you are GDPR compliant also. And I will actually show you an example of this a little later. Great, guys. Thank you so much for those questions once again. And I had told you I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools which are there. As you know, Everest Group is one of the prominent research institutions, and there are a lot of RPA tools out there. But these three, actually, UiPath, Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism actually recently got acquired by Vista Capital, I think about a couple of months back, for about close to $1.2 to $1.5 billion. UiPath had an IPO recently, and they are also, I think 2 years back, they were officially the fastest growing company in the enterprise software segment. And Automation Anywhere also is doing pretty good. Microsoft has just come out with their RPA solution. Then SAP has its own RPA, but it's very limited. Then you've got a lot of niche players also in this space. If you want to start again, just take these two. They have their free versions also, and you can basically move with it. Okay, so now coming to your risk pieces, some of you had your questions. Can we use RPA for automating risk assessments and controls? Absolutely. You can automate that also. And there are typically 3 different types of, and this is an extract from the paper I've published. This is a link to the paper. You can just go to my LinkedIn, you'll find it there in the featured posts. But there are 3 different types of controls. You can automate controls, you can automate controls monitoring, and you can automate controls testing, right? So some examples, like it can aid in performing the risk assessments on the application and supporting infrastructure, right? So it can even create some fake transactions. And if you remember the example you saw where a bot was interacting with multiple applications, so it can create fake transactions, dummy transactions, see the responses, analyze those results. It can help you in scoping discussions, like SOC scoping and things like that. It can monitor controls on a continuous basis. Typically when there are vulnerability attacks and cybersecurity attacks, some of your ports go down, or they get open the way they should not be open, and some of those things happen. Using RPA, you can build a continuous monitoring layer, which is a secondary layer apart from your current systems which are in action to prevent any threats. But you can even do that to achieve a lot of different things. And it can even aid you in rectifying your audit findings from the control perspective. So there are a lot of different things which can happen there, and you can read about some of them in my paper as well, right? Okay, so all this sounds great, but what about the risk management framework for an RPA solution? And I know that some of you had this question, right? So for this entire piece, I'm going to first talk about what are the typical risks in an RPA environment, right? And again, I want you guys to ask me questions here, as many as possible, but I'll talk about typically what are the biggest challenges, and as an auditor, which are the weak points of when people implement RPA. How do you look at that, right? Second, I'm going to show you an example, a real live example of audit trail within RPA, right? And audit trail, guys, can be captured at great levels of depth. And I'm going to show you an example of that, right? And that is what gives auditors confidence on using these tools. And also somebody had a question on GDPR and how is data privacy done. So I'm going to show you an example of how RPA can actually mask data and remove PII information from data sets. And then somebody also asked about some compliance checklists. So I have a typical InfoSec compliance checklist, which is given out by organizations for any RPA implementation. I've given a copy of that checklist today here, which you can basically see, right? So typical risks in an RPA environment, and I've taken this from a Deloitte report, the link to which is here. It's a great report. You should read that report, right? Now, number one, it offers a broader spectrum of application integration, right? So there are many applications which get integrated at the same time. So from a vulnerability perspective, you have to see how secure is your RPA solution, right? Now, imagine that you've got about 10 applications on the cloud, you've got 5 applications on-prem, and you have a central RPA engine which is working with all of these different applications at once. If a hacker is able to attack your RPA engine, which also has connections with a database to store everything, it can actually get everything out from there. So the security of your RPA infra cloud and the robustness of that security becomes very, very important. The second typical risk is, if you do not have control design as part of the whole scheme of things, it can again fall apart. So what happens, a very bad practice in the RPA world is, if you remember, somebody asked the question earlier that how do you manage changes to the script, right? This piece is to do more with that. There needs to be a very, very strong change management and release management framework within the entire world of RPA. And if there is no change management or release management framework, then you have developers who keep making changes to the script at any point of time, right? And it becomes so risky. Imagine if somebody gets access to your system where RPA is deployed, and there is not a very strong deployment. Anybody can just go change the code and deploy it. It becomes very risky, and somebody can just insert a malicious code and things can break. The third bad practice is that people create generic bot IDs to do things, and what they do is they leverage one single bot ID for multiple processes and things like that. Now these RPA tools, they come with their own EULA, and violating that EULA can be very expensive. I've seen examples also in the past. So it's very important that the license agreements are understood in the correct way, and specific IDs are created for specific pieces. There's a strong documentation, right? The fourth point, somebody also raised this earlier, we discussed this in the past, that a lot of credentials get stored, right? So you have to audit where is that credential, where are those credentials getting stored? Within the application, whenever a credential is recalled, you have to make sure that the credential is recalled from the credentials vault, because that's the only secure place of storing it. Sometimes what developers do is that in the code itself, they will specify the password somewhere within the code that, click on this username, write this username, click on password, type this password. Now imagine if somebody gets access to that code, they have access to all the passwords, right? So the way the whole authentication is done, it's very important. In fact, most of the organizations I work with, they use two-factor authentication today, and very, very complex keys which change every week, right? And some of these things are very important. Now, due to high processing capability of bots, a delayed response to cyber incidents will lead to inappropriate processing of high volume or value transactions. So basically here, what we're trying to say is that in case there is a cyber threat, right? If something goes wrong, it can actually cause a lot of delay in your critical business functions. And there you need to be very, very careful. And bots are typically not built for intent identification. So you never know if somebody is just doing a test vulnerability assessment or if there's a real attack, right? So all of these things are typical risks. And if you see the nature of these risks, right, the underlying factor is that if you're able to design it well, if you're able to put the right internal controls in place, it's pretty robust. And that's the reason why you still have so many banks and so many organizations who are actually using RPA and automation and AI today, because if it was risky, they would not be using it, right? So there are risks, but they are mostly design risks and internal control risks. And if you do that well, then you're pretty secure from that perspective, right? All right, so with the right audit trail, most control related problems can be solved. If you're an auditor, for each of these pieces, you just want the audit trail to understand if everything is there, if all the things are checked. So one question for you: should the audit trail be limited to a session log level, or do we need audit trail at a transactional level, right? So for example, all these RPA tools and bots, they have logs which get published. So it will say that session number 1, so many activities were performed, so on and so forth. But within that set of activities performed, not all tools, not all development work actually gives you audit trail at a transaction level and at a field level, right? So, let me give you a associated risk with this kind of an example. Now, I showed you an example of automated invoice processing, right? What happens in case the system is not able to fetch the right details from an invoice, or even forget that. Let's say that a system has extracted details, it has created that CSV file. What if you have somebody who comes in and edits that CSV file for the amount? Or let's say if somebody is doing a QA, most organizations have a manual quality assurance layer where invoice is put in the system, data is already extracted, then you have an agent who will just compare. Comparing doesn't take that much time. If he had to take everything out, write it manually, it would have taken a lot of time. But I'm talking about just comparing. Comparing actually doesn't take a lot of time. So that QA is there. What if in that QA layer, somebody maliciously increases a zero in the invoice? Let's say there is a big vendor, right? That vendor typically submits invoices worth, there's a blanket PO for $1 million. And the vendor submitted an invoice for $1,000, but somebody maliciously increased to $10,000. It is possible that for a blanket PO of $1 million, it can get ignored. So what do you do there, right? Now, the answer to that is that you need audit trail at a field level, at every single field. And I'm actually going to show you an example of that. And let me quickly go to my browser. You guys are able to see my browser, right?
Yes, please go ahead.
Great. So I'm using a tool here called Hyperscience. Hyperscience is one of the leaders in terms of extracting data from documents, right? And most of the audit work, most of the work which gets done in the RPA world is extracting data from documents and then doing things with it. So I'm going to show you an example of how they have built in a very strong audit trail, right? Let me go to one of the submissions. Okay, so not this. Okay. Now here, let me actually show this example to you. If you see, this is a W9 form for one of our examples, and a W9 form is a very standard form in the US, which has a taxpayer identification number and things like that. So here, this is a standard form. Somebody wrote out this form, and the job of the machine is now to extract details from this form, right? So the way this works is you upload that form and the details get extracted. And I'm showing you the way the audit trail gets captured. So if you see, if I click on this field, it says General Electric. It says General Electric here. Now, if you see here, this part is the audit trail. It says identified by machine, transcribed by machine. What does it mean? It means there is no way somebody could have manually made or tampered this. But if I look at this field, which is Thomas Edison, if you see this clearly, let me actually zoom in. If you see this clearly, it can also be Jonas Edison, right? It can also be a J. So in this case, it says Thomas Edison, but transcribed by Edrich Ching. So what Edrich has done is that he's actually changed this. The machine would have identified something else, and Edrich actually changed that to Thomas Edison. That is how the audit trail basically gets maintained. And wherever, if you see some of these other fields, here it says identified by machine, transcribed by machine, identified by machine, transcribed by machine. So here you see examples that there is no tampering done. But if some tampering is done, then it basically comes in as something which has been done by a human being. The way this tool is designed, for example, there is no way you could, there is no scope for you to do something from the back end. Everything resides here. And they've built in this kind of an audit trail. That's one example. And I'll show you one more example. Let's take, say, this one. And by the way, if you can see, sometimes one of the big myths, again, big myth in the RPA and automation world is that handwritten data cannot be extracted. Just look at the quality of extraction of handwritten data, right? This is all really bad, whatever, English. And here also, if you see, it tells you if something is machine extracted or, something. all those things are there, right? So that is how audit trail is maintained. And while most tools have the logs and things, but you need to maintain your audit trails at this level. And when, as an auditor, you do your sample checks for data extracted from documents, you actually have to do it at this level, where you have to go and check if the audit trail is present at a field level or not, right? We've got another question from Joshua. Can RPA be taken over by an advanced persistent threat and create a cybersecurity incident issue? If yes, what are the protection steps that are to be followed? Absolutely, Joshua, these things are possible. And you need simple things like two-factor authentication and your typical securities. It's not seen very prominently in the RPA world that you have an APT kind of an event, but it's prominently seen. It's I think there were a couple of incidents in the past, but your typical standard server securing methodologies and authentication methodologies is the right way to do it, and it's not too complicated if you want to do that, right? I can see Sachin that you've raised your hand. Sachin, if you have a question, you can please write it down in the question window. Great. Now another example, and somebody asked that in the past, of what do we do with personally identifiable information, right? So for example, let's say again I'm extracting data from documents, and there is an electricity company who's asked for a TFN. TFN, let's say, is some sensitive number like a tax filing number or something like that. And then this is the document which comes into the system. By the way, if you know that RBI has recently created a new norm that companies cannot really store Aadhaar photographs of anybody unless those photographs are redacted, which means somebody needs to come in and black out that Aadhaar number, and it's become a pain. I remember about 3 or 4 weeks back, I went to some hotel and then I gave them my Aadhaar number as an ID, and they said, sir, can you please give us something else? And I was like, why? They said, storing Aadhaar is a pain. Now, how is RPA helping with that? This is what it does. Wherever it detects a sensitive information like this, it actually blacks it out, right? So you can create scripts where they are intelligent enough to first identify very sensitive information kept, and then when it stores that sensitive information, it blacks it out. And if you want to look at what this is, the regulation doesn't say that you can't store the number. It says you can't store the image. So you can still have authentication based access to reveal this information, which can get transferred within the backend. So this is how risk mitigation is happening wherever you have GDPR cases or wherever you have strong PII information which is out there. You can actually use some of these methodologies to protect yourself, right? And this is your typical InfoSec questionnaire, which I was talking about. And for any RPA tool. So just description of application, the functional design documentation, and I was talking to you about the solution design and technical design, right? Similar to that, you have the functional design documentation which needs to be submitted. Then which kind of information will be handled, PII, SPI, PHI, credit card. And for each one of them, in case your response is yes, then for each one of them, you have to give them the solution architecture. So for example, for PII, if your system doesn't really have something like this, then that system is a very bad system, right? Then which region, so that for every region, they have their own security regulations. And then if it is an on-premise or cloud, then if it's a cloud solution, then you have to give them your cloud data flow architecture, your node locking, and your security at a data flow level. Then who's the cloud provider, and what is the detention timeline for data storage? How easy do the password change? What are the security certifications? So typically PCI DSS, ISO 27001, SOC 2 Type 1, VeraSafe. Some of these are the prominent security certifications which some of these tools which need to have. Then every tool needs to have a complete, security policy document, and that security policy document has to be studied. Then you need to do a vulnerability assessment test, dynamic application security testing report, and the web application firewall. So, there are all of these different things. I just wanted to, give you a copy of what this typically looks like, so that you have an overarching view on whenever you are working with implementing an RPA kind of a solution, you being risk professionals, that what are the important elements. So tomorrow, if you are consulted to audit RPA solution, you have to go back to this InfoSec questionnaire and see what was answered in this InfoSec questionnaire and what is the actuals which have basically been deployed, right? So that also becomes a very, very important part in auditing as part of your audit piece, right? So that brings us to the last portion of our presentation and just a couple of slides, after which I'm going to open it up for questions, and maybe we can have some of you even unmute yourselves and talk about some things, and I can maybe show you the example on the credit score data extraction piece, which somebody had a question about, right? So how do you use RPA for cybersecurity? Now, the short answer to this is that think of RPA as a use case agnostic, industry vertical agnostic tool, which can automate anything which is repetitive, right? And from that perspective, things like running vulnerability assessments and running scripts to check if devices are online, detecting hacker attempts, detecting how many websites have logged you or tracked you. You can create your own use cases. But typically, what are the most prominent RPA and cybersecurity use cases? And these are some of the unique ones, rather than the generic ones which are out there. These are some of the unique cases where people are using this, right? Number one, defense from viruses and attacks. Now, assume a scenario, and this is very common actually, especially in the Indian enterprise, Indian companies sector, that there is some peculiar virus which has come into a certain system. And then that virus starts spreading from that system to all the other systems via emails or via LAN or via something, right? There are two things which you can do there. Here, number one, you can have an RPA script in place which immediately isolates a system from the entire network, right from the moment you have a vulnerability detected. So let's say you have an antivirus system, it says vulnerability detected. So your RPA system can immediately capture that, and it can disconnect your LAN and network services so that you stop doing that. Second, the other prominent example, a couple of weeks back, I got emails from 4 of my employees, and they sent me a forward saying that, hey, you are asking for some $20 or something to be sent for something urgent. What is this really you? And since it came from you, I was going to make that transfer and all that. And then we checked that there was some hacker somewhere who was trying to do some phishing campaigns for our company. They were sending emails from my incorrect email address and things like that. So when you are aware of a prominent type of a phishing program, you can deploy bots to monitor your employees' mailboxes, even at a server level, that whenever an email like that comes in, it automatically blocks it, and it takes the rectification action and generates a report, right? So this is one specific way, in which RPA is being used. The second piece is your safeguarding of your sensitive information. I already showed you how RPA can be built as a separate layer to protect PII information, right? Let me give you a use case. The RBI circular which came in today, or even this happened, it created a huge problem in the European Union when once GDPR was implemented. A lot of companies who had PII information, they had to very quickly act and change some of the data storage policies. So let's say you have a folder in which you have 10,000 Aadhars or PAN cards or whatever documents, right? Say tax filing identification number. You could use RPA to create a replica of that by redacting all the information. Imagine such a simple solution to protecting PII, right? Similarly, it can auto detect and lock sensitive information generated in systems, right? So suppose you have a front end web portal where customers are supposed to submit some details. Tomorrow, one of the fields becomes PII, gets declared as PII or some other regulation. So you can again run scripts to lock that information from getting leaked. Third piece is to detect and eliminate unauthorized access. Now, see, the way most of your cybersecurity programs work today is that you get alerts in case something bad happens, or there are periodic network monitoring scripts which are created. However, each one of these tools and systems, they have their own limitations, and you can create RPA scripts to just go to every system and check that, okay, for system X, I should have these many ports open, these many IPs whitelisted, these many users logged in. Is it matching with the actuals? What if there's an extra user logged in, right? So you try to think of those scenarios which your cybersecurity application or your vulnerability prevention application does not capture, and you create those scenarios, right? And you can do that on a case. So the thing with RPA is that whatever you can imagine, you can pretty much implement, right? So if you can imagine a scenario which is not getting covered by your current program, you can go and create that within an RPA world. Similarly, you can see if there are some sessions which are of a slightly longer duration, you can block them. Or if there are some unauthorized users coming in, you can block them, and you can create RPA scripts which can suddenly create a whole new layer of firewall for certain users. You can do all those things, right? So think of RPA as a very easy way to create your own cybersecurity software, where you can have your ideas and you can create your own scripts to put up defense walls and things like that. Next, and this is actually very practical and very important, you support your cybersecurity team to take over the manual network monitoring and multiple manual tasks which they do: creation of reports, analysis of reports, presenting of reports. All of those things can be taken over from them, and the cybersecurity team can focus on the key strategic initiatives. And then the final point is to improve the turnaround times for cybersecurity breach responses, right? A recent study by EY actually showed that if you use RPA to recognize breaches, it reduces from an average of 205 days to a few days, right? Because sometimes for complex systems, identifying breaches are very difficult. So your continuous proactive monitoring basically improves your response times for your cybersecurity breaches, right? And finally, some other typical use cases, just to summarize everything. You can run proactive penetration tests, check for open ports or vulnerable elements independently. You can do cyber threat hunting to check for indicators of potential risks, right? You can classify emails or system alerts according to the threat categories. There are so many good RPA email classifiers. Even though if you use Office 365 or Google Workplace, they have their own spam filters, but hackers are very smart, right? So, and sometimes you have targeted strategies. So you can create your own customized spam filter in case your organization is getting a lot of different, silly emails. It can trigger security controls based on detected alert, right? So responses. What if, you could define that there are these 25 types of threat alerts which can come in. And then you can actually create scripts for each one of them, saying that, okay, if I get a threat which is detected and that threat is about unauthenticated login, what do I do next? So you can have a series of 20 steps which can get performed. And that is where RPA makes responses to any vulnerability or responses to any threat very, very quick, proactive, and very, very efficient. Generating reports of the threat and sending it to the teams, looking up IP addresses on internet and generating reports, right? So even things like, there are blacklists which are maintained for IPs and hackers and things like that. You can constantly query those blacklists and put that into your own blacklists for your application so that nobody can access it. And simple things like investigating domains, retrieving logs, querying accounts, checking if your website is down, doing basically all kinds of monitoring. All of these things are typically how people are using RPA in the world of cybersecurity. Venkat has a question. I'm an organization process and standards auditor and senior process consultant with 18 years of experience. Can I switch over to RPA? What is the job prospect for people like me? How much will it take me to be industry ready? So Venkat, you know what? I would not say switch over to RPA, but I would say make RPA part of your armory, right? Now, I'll tell you the way the RPA world is headed. Now, RPA is still being driven by IT guys. And it's not meant to be like that. It's meant to be driven by process and function guys. So what you can do is you can create your use cases and your specific niche in deploying your consulting activities, where you can start consulting people saying how can they actually implement RPA as part of their process, right? The industry prospect is massive. There are very few people. I'm sure a lot of people who are here today, you might not have even heard about RPA, but it's so prominent today. But the reality is that very few people know about it. So it's a very, very big scope for you. The prospects are great, so you can make it a part of your arsenal. I would not really say that you should let go of your niche and move completely into RPA. And how much time will it take you to be industry ready? 6 months maximum, right? You can start first learning about RPA. I gave you 2 websites where you can do that. And at the same time, create your own use cases. Try to think of problems you can solve for your existing customers using RPA and implement something. And the moment you implement something, your excitement will take you, across. And that's what my advice would be to you. Okay, Rajiv has a question. Can we integrate RPA with online platforms like Zoom? Absolutely, Rajiv. In fact, I was just doing I remember I think a couple of weeks back, I was in a call with somebody and they had one more participant in Zoom, which was called the note taker. Okay. And after the call, I called them and I asked them that, hey, you know what is this note taker? They said that they have created an RPA based virtual attendee which transcribes everything which is spoken in the call, right? So it can actually convert whatever I said into text, then do text mining. And he showed me that in the conversation, he could identify how many times was some technical terminology said, or if somebody revealed the name of some competitor, or even do sentiment analytics in terms of how enthusiastic was the conversation and things like that. So Rajesh, Rajiv, whatever you can imagine, I mean, all those things are getting done today. Of course, the complexity levels vary, but the answer is yes. The short answer is yes. And I just gave you a detailed answer also. And with that, guys, this is how you stay in touch with me. This is my email address. This is my LinkedIn handle. And the papers I was talking about, you can find them on LinkedIn. They are in the highlighted post section. You can just go there and capture from there. I think this QR code possibly takes you to my LinkedIn page. Please feel free to, stay connected, and whatever questions you could not ask today. And I hope that this session just ignites some curiosity in you. And this would be the beginning of a journey. And if you have any questions later, we are a very small community. I have great respect for Narasimhan, who invited me here today. So I'm obliged to help all of you guys. If you guys have any questions for any of these pieces, please feel free. Lakshmanan, you have a question. Is it easy to set controls to avoid duplication, failure intimation? Very easy, Lakshmanan. In fact, some of the tools offer it out of the box as a functionality. They have deduplicate plugins and things like that, and sending intimations are very, very easy. Great. And now, thank you guys. Thank you for all the good wishes. I'm here for some more time if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, Saurabh, and before I hand over to the people one more time, I just wanted to reiterate and please request your colleagues and whoever is there and whoever wants to take up their career in the information security to participate in the next our sessions. And also you will see that at least once in a month, but we are almost all the months we are conducting 2 CPE sessions, similar to that what we have seen today. Saurabh, it's I have attended many sessions, okay, but the way you have described today, and it's very, very what you call energetic information, and for all the information security professional, and especially when I looked at the RPA capability. Initially, some of the thought process was that it is only for some section, but the way you described, and yes, definitely, and I will also get in touch with you for the organization, and we will connect again. But again, it's an excellent session. And I request every participant, please log into our Facebook, LinkedIn, and share the CPE sessions as well as the CISA serious system classes, and please refer us to other members so that Bangalore chapter will remain as as the number one in India. Yeah, back to Elangovan. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Saurabh. It was indeed a wonderful session. And I think you can see in the chat window, wonderful appreciations actually pouring in. A humble request to all the participants is, scan this QR code and it will take you through a Menti link, or otherwise you'll have to just visit menti.com and enter this code. While I cannot promise that there is an RPA to give Saurabh immediate updates, I'm sure this will be taken into consideration, in the sessions to come. And I'm really glad that, those live use cases coupled with, the bots, demo bots, etc., brought in a lot of excitement. Just checking if there are any open questions as yet, or if there are somebody else who would want to share their thoughts. We could probably also try to unmute you. I think Vijay Kumar has one question. Is it an in-house built RPA bot that needs to go under InfoSec questionnaire shared by you?
So that's a good question, Vijay. Actually, both the components, right? First, you will use a third-party tool, mostly to automate processes. So the third-party tool needs to go through that. Your cloud architecture needs to go through that, and the processes and policies you perform or use as part of your deployment methodology, that also needs to go through that. So all the different pieces need to go through the pieces. And I think we have one more question from Farooq. Are there any specific trainings with cases that you discussed related to InfoSec in the UiPath and automation anywhere? There might be, Farooq. I think under the solution architect model or something. I think there are some pieces there. Yeah.
Great. And while we are seeing appreciation pouring in, any more questions? If you want to have a quick chat, or any specific questions which you feel is too lengthy to probably write, I could unmute you. A gentle reminder to please give your feedback in this link which you notice, and I've shared the link as well.
Okay, and if there is no feedback and there is no points, Saurabh, and once again, and from all the ISACA members as well as ISACA board from Bangalore chapter, and we thank you for conducting such a wonderful session, and we will see in the future as well with some more the detailed information on RPA for the benefit of everyone.
Absolutely, sir. An absolute honor to be here, and I think great participation from everyone. It shows the strength of the members who are there as part of the Bangalore chapter, because I remember just after the first slide, I had some 15 questions pouring in. That is unique. I haven't seen that in the past. So congratulations to you guys also for, chairing a brilliant group here. And I'm always available for yourself and the members to be reached at any point of time. Thank you so much for the opportunity today.
Thank you. Saurabh, before we wrap up, I just have got a couple of questions if it has just come in, and if you don't mind, you could answer that. Where is the RPA audit checklist? I think you did make a mention. You could probably want to reiterate on that.
Sure. So Venkat, you will need to drop me an email and I can respond to that email with that. It's not a public checklist. It's our own proprietary checklist, but I'm very happy to share it with you. That's not a problem. Farooq, your question is what level of expertise is required to upskill? Curiosity and desire, Farooq, nothing more than that. Since this is no code, low code, you already are a very established individual if you are in this group here. So you have all the expertise required. You just need the intent. That's it. Santosh, how RPA can help to mitigate cybersecurity risks? Santosh, I covered this as part of the presentation, and I'll share a copy of this. You can refer to it later. Pankaj, same answer. You can just send me an email and I can revert. And I think Narasimhan, I have shared the presentation with you. And
yeah.
Great. So that can be shared with everyone.
Sure. So that brings us to the end of this very, very exciting session, and it was very, very nice of you, Saurabh, to spare your time and share your thoughts on a Saturday evening while all of us have our preoccupations. And sincere thanks to all the participants. I'm sure all of you are enriched in terms of what exactly RPA is and how it works. Watch out for more exciting content, and we are coming up with much more unique things. We are trying to have offbeat sessions, something on health, something on yoga, something on spirituality, in addition to the traditional set of knowledge, on CPEs. I'm trying to bring in some CEO CXO connects where we'll probably have about 45 minutes to 1 hour candid discussions and conversations with CEOs and CXOs of various companies. And of course, trying to bring in some more valuable content, both from ISACA perspective. ISACA itself has a huge knowledge base, right? So we should probably explore that and exciting things. And this would be your last CPE session for the year 2021 until I'm not too sure whether we have immediately anything lined up, considering the vacation and the long weekend ahead. But do not forget, the very next Saturday, 5:30 to 7:30, we have this introductory seminar where we would be showcasing to various members or to the audience, saying that what are the various career options and how do you proceed with the ISACA certifications. On that note, thank you so much for joining in. It was wonderful hosting, and once again, thank you, Saurabh. Take care, have a great Sunday, and stay safe. Bye-bye. I will end the meeting now.
Yeah, thank you.